Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth.
Cell phone video shows ICE agents taking a man away in cuffs moments after his asylum hearing.
One of the biggest issues that's plagued American bureaucracy for the longest time has been a lack of interagency cooperation. For those of you old enough to remember, you'll recall that the main gripe that W and others used to excuse away, explain why the 9/11 attacks happened was that the agencies weren't talking to one another. And hence, W had the bright idea of creating yet another layer of bureaucracy called the Department of Homeland Security, as well as another one, the so-called National Intelligence Director. Currently, that's Tulsi Gabbard. The entire idea, I suppose, the working theory was that this is going to make it where these agencies who previously competed with each other and hid secrets from each other as they tried to compete for federal funding, well, now they would have no choice but to cooperate because they had somebody over them. How well has that been working? Your guess is as good as mine. But one of the organizations that the Department of Homeland Security is supposed to be over was ICE. Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. After all, the terrorists who carried out the 9/11 attack were not homegrown terrorists. These were foreigners. So of course ICE should be under the Department of Homeland Security. But how's things been going since the 9/11 attacks? What has the Department of Homeland Security been doing to secure the homeland? Not much. Even during W's administration, we were seeing excuses being made by the federal government for why they weren't doing anything regarding the tsunami of people who were flooding across the border. And it's continued all the way up into the Biden years. Americans were told that there just wasn't much that could be done about it. This was just the natural movement of human beings, and small things like borders simply cannot and should not be used to try to stop these natural processes. And both parties recited this. It wasn't just the Democrats. Democrats and Republicans alike were using the exact same line. And that's part of the reason why the Orange Man has such charm and appeal to certain people in America. Because people were looking and going, man, the U.S. government can't get anything done. Either party. These guys can't do anything. And so the Orange Man came in, sharp elbows and all, and said, I can do something. And it's a matter of if people have to choose between a loudmouth bigot who at least is able to do something, as opposed to the phony, genteel, sophisticated swamp creatures in D.C., well, they'd much rather choose an uncertain something than a certain nothing. And I don't think it's a coincidence at all that ICE has started posting up and waiting for illegals to come to the courthouse for their court hearings and arresting them there. I think that's deliberate. You see, the entire legal loophole that immigration activists have been claiming is that when a person comes into the country illegally, all they have to do is make some sort of claim of asylum. Usually all they got to do is just say, there's gangs back in my home country and I'm terrified of them. That's usually the excuse that covers all. And then they'll be allowed into the U.S. and told, you got to come back and talk to an immigration judge on such and such a date. That's what's been going on for years and years. So every time the immigration debate would start, you would have people who say these people are in the country illegally, and then you would have some, usually, though not always, leftists who would say, no, they're not in the country illegally. They do have legal status. So what do you mean? They're not in the country illegally. They don't have a green card or anything. Well, their legal status is that they have a court hearing, and that allows them to be in the country pending the outcome of the court hearing. They could be rejected at the court hearing, in which case they could be deported. But what's much more likely to happen is the immigration judge will say, well, you're already here. You've been here a few months already. We might as well go ahead and let you hang around. And when asked why they keep doing this, even the immigration judges basically say, well, there's simply not enough capacity to actually deport people, so we might as well go ahead and tell them they can stay. In fact, Kilmer Abrego, he's the illegal alien who's down in El Salvador, who a lot of the white leftists are making a big deal about. That's exactly what happened with him. He was not legally in the country, but they were saying, well, he had legal status. We're waiting on his court case. Yeah, but the court already decided to kick the can down the road, and Trump decided, well, we're running out of road. And I don't think that that's any sort of coincidence that they got ICE hanging out at these courthouses. That loophole has been the main thing that people have been using to get around the law. And it makes them subject to not very much. But now Trump is enforcing the law and saying that, hey, if these people don't show up for their immigration court hearings, then that whole loophole no longer applies. And just to make sure that people get the message, we got ICE sitting around here. We got these much publicized stalking raids that have been taking place, waiting at these courthouses. And of course, people aren't showing up. Once they see that, they're going to be like, ooh, then I'm definitely going to get deported. Well, the word around the campfire these days is that Trump's support among Latinos is down, and the white media is making much hay about that. In fact, it seems that Trump is starting to embark upon a new era of interagency cooperation in the federal government. He's got HUD and ICE working together to go after anybody who might be an illegal alien trying to get government benefits for housing and such. Now, this is something that I spent a number of years talking about. When people come to the United States illegally, there's three things that they all look for: a source of income, a place to stay, and a bank that they can use in order to send their money back to their home countries, or at least have a place where they can put the money that they get being in the United States working illegally. These are the three legs of the stool that props up illegal immigration. Everybody knows this. So you've got these unscrupulous employers, these morally bankrupt banking institutions, and these low-down landlords all working together to get their piece of the pie out of the huge amounts of money that are possible in this illegal immigrant economy. That's what's happened here. It's no secret that these have been the three main factors that have enabled people to come to the United States and be able to, quote-unquote, hide in the shadows. They haven't been hiding at all. They've been working out in the open for unscrupulous employers. They've been going to the banks and depositing their money happily and cheerfully, and they've been going home to whatever apartment complex or house that they've been renting, and then they actually are allowed to actually buy houses with government money. That's what's been going on here. It certainly couldn't have happened without the U.S. government and these local governments supporting it and funding it and propping it up. That's just a fact. Now, apparently there were some folks who had told themselves that this was simply going to go on forever, and that nothing was ever going to be done because nothing had been done in so long. Whether or not this is a bump in the road or a new beginning remains to be seen, but one thing that is evident is that Trump's support among Latinos has taken a hit. How big a hit, we don't know. Keep in mind, this information comes from the left corner of the white media, and while both the white left and white right only marginally disagree over generally shared aims, when it comes to how they compete to who's holding the whip, they can be adept at taking shots at each other, within bounds, of course. So how much of a hit Trump's Latino support has taken is unknown, but one thing is sure, it has definitely taken a hit. And the reason why is there's a huge amount of confusion by Latin American immigrants. The reason why is there do happen to be factions and divisions even amongst themselves. The simple reality is a lot of them thought to themselves that when Trump was talking about getting rid of illegal aliens, they were thinking, oh, he's talking about the people who we don't like. If you happen to be from Mexico, you're like, well, we don't like those Guatemalans, so that's probably who he's talking about. And if you're from Guatemala, you go, well, we don't like those El Salvadorans, so that's probably who he's talking about. And if you're from Central America, you say, well, he's probably talking about those people from Chile or Colombia or Venezuela. That's what everybody does. They look around and go, oh, it must be talking about you. Surely he can't be talking about me. And the orange man has said, I'm talking about all of you. You've had black people who have been trying to explain to people south of the border for the longest time that whole little game that they play down there where basically they allow a bunch of people with brown skin to call themselves white. That's a little trick that they learned from the Catholic Church a long time ago. That kind of confusing the people that you want to suppress. That kind of thing may go down there. But as soon as you get north of the border, these folk up here, they're not going to play that game. They'll go ahead and let you claim to be white on driver's licenses or on job applications or school forms, but at the end of the day, they know exactly what their definition of white is. And it's none of those folk who happen to have brown skin south of the border. Black folks have been saying this, and nobody's been listening. And at this point, it's all talked out. And speaking of talk, all black folks should remember during the failed Biden administration, one of the things he said almost as soon as he got into office was he started lecturing black people and saying, in the black community, you better find a way to start working with the Hispanic community. Well, black people have already been trying to do that for decades. Black people were the ones who created the phrase black and brown. And it took a while for a lot of black folks to finally figure out that black people were the only ones invoking that phrase. Nobody else was. Well, the way things are going now, Biden, or at least the Democratic leadership, they ought to be saying that the Hispanic community now needs to find a way to cooperate with the black community. It would certainly be a first. But of course, he's not saying that. Nobody ever needs to get on code with us. Nobody ever says, hey, you got to start getting on black folks' good side. You got to start finding ways to work with black people. You're going to be needing these guys' support. Whether it be the white media or the white political parties or any of these so-called activist groups, all of them are on the same page. Then when it comes to black people, well, you don't ever sit there and say anything that prioritizes black people. You don't say anything that makes it clear that people need to listen to black people, much less act on what black people say. So that's the reason why we've been seeing a number of people who have been saying, where the world's the black community at? Where's the black community at? Well, the black community is working on ourselves. That's what we're doing. We tried to forge a black fill-in-the-blank alliance with anyone and everyone, and everybody made it very clear they didn't want to be allied with us, and that being the case, we said, okay, fine, then, we'll take our gifts and move on, and that's exactly what we've done. And you know what? I recommend that everybody else do the same thing, too. I think everybody should be working on themselves. Though with ICE and DHS staging these surprise raids hither, thither, and yon, it's going to be a little bit more difficult for some people than others. But make no mistake, folks, there is one thing that does need to be mentioned here. White power is hazing Latinos as a group. Yes, there's going to be a lot of people who wind up being deported, but not all of them are. Let's be realistic about that. Ultimately, white supremacy at that point is going to resume its prior stance. Black people are the enemy. White power has no illusions about that, and it's not going to forget about that. No matter who they're hazing today, they will always be coming after us tomorrow, and the same people who you see right now making noise about ICE and DHS, as soon as white supremacy lets up on them a little bit, as soon as it says, well, we might give you a pat on the head if you at least go along with us rhetorically, they will be the same ones who resume all of that anti-black rhetoric that the Nuri Martinez's and the Kevin DeLeons and others were spouting out there in LA. Having seen what white power is willing to do, they're going to catch a convenient case of amnesia when it comes to all of these grievances that they have about ICE today. And a lot of the agitating that they make to, let's go ahead and see about trying to find ways to bring the family members over, a lot of that's going to start to become a lot more quiet too. But what isn't going to be quiet is ultimately they're going to be deciding, hey, the best way to get in the good graces of white power is let's renew our aggression against black people. At the very least, hopefully we can get some of the heat off of ourselves. That's where this is ultimately going to go long term. So no matter what you may be seeing on the television today, just keep that in mind because that train is never late. And what little token rhetorical resistance that there might have been from immigrant groups, well, there's going to be less of that in the future. After all, they got some new pet issue that they'll be moving on to. But in the meantime, no matter how hot this summer may get, I don't mind at all seeing plenty of ICE in the streets. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Atu Hammond, Neil Safir, Jerlene Harris, Leonard Cottingham, and Suleiman Alaji. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.